As we prepare to work on letters, this is all about power dynamics. Now, every single rhetorical situation you're asked to look at, whether it is a speech, whether it is a letter, whether it's an editorial, everything about it is unique. And that's our job, is to figure out what makes that particular text unique. But letters always deal with power dynamics. Is it someone who is quote unquote weaker and has less power writing to someone who's stronger? Or is it someone who already has power, either writing to someone equal or below? So that power dynamic always matters, because if you're writing a letter, you want something. So as we take a look at this letter, we have to know that Elizabeth Barrett Browning wants something. She wants Napoleon to pardon Victor Hugo. But she is writing a very different letter than someone else would write to Napoleon. Or she's also writing a different letter than she would write if it was going to someone that wasn't Napoleon. It is this dynamic of Browning and Napoleon that is crucial for us to understand. So that's why we are going to use our SOAP categories: speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, and then use SOAP U to figure out what is unique about this situation. Let's take a look. So we know that our speaker is Elizabeth Barrett Browning, but we cannot stop there. In the same way, we can't just say, oh, the speech was from Madeleine Albright, we're good. We have to say, no, 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 no. There are layers to this that matter. So in this case, we have Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who now we look back at and we know is one of like the great poets of her time. But we have to remember time period here. She's writing in the early to mid 1800s, and she's writing to someone, a man in power. So it's not just Elizabeth Barrett Browning. She recognizes, and I need to be careful with how I say this, I hope you understand what I mean. She has to recognize how others see her place in society. Now, that of course isn't right, but she's intelligent enough to recognize that. So as we start looking at this, we keep pushing. We say that time period matters in this context. She is a woman in the early to mid 1800s. That means she does not have power within society. She does not have prestige. Even with all of her accomplishments, she's still not seen on the same level as some of her male contemporaries. And certainly she's not going to be seen that way by many men in power. So that context matters. Does time period always matter? I mean, I guess it does on some level, but sometimes it matters more than others. Here, it matters a whole heck of a lot for our speaker. She is very aware of how her audience, because remember, there's always a connection between speaker and audience. She's very aware of how her audience, Napoleon, is going to take getting a letter of advice from a woman. It's not going to go well. She knows it's not going to go well. So she has to be really strategic about how she crafts this letter. That letter would change a lot if she was writing to someone else, anyone else, but she knows Napoleon. So that part of her being a female in the time period really matters. Occasion, nothing super fancy here. Victor Hugo is banished. She wants to act on it. We know even what her purpose is, right? If we want to jump down really quickly, but we'll get there in a moment. Because again, speaker and audience matter. In a letter, it is so incredibly important. It's important for any text, but letter is just a little bit more intimate because it is one person usually writing to one other person or a really specific group. But here, one person to another person. There's an intimacy to that. So here, we know that it's Napoleon, but just like we did with Browning, we have to keep pushing. Time period matters again, right? If she does not have power and prestige because she's a woman in the 1800s, he does have power and prestige. He is a man in this time period, and he holds a position of power as an official. And so that is a dynamic she's very aware of. This is very much a strategic move that Browning makes to appeal to Napoleon's power and to say, I don't have power, you do. You should use your power in this way. Here's why you would benefit. She's really intentional here about that dynamic. So as we think about her purpose, we know that she wants to convince Napoleon not to banish Hugo. We have to think about how she does that. This is all about, sir, you have power, I do not. However, you could use this power in a really interesting way. You could benefit. Notice how she plays him like this, right? Really talking about how he's going to benefit. She's playing to his ego. Now, would every letter do that? Absolutely not. But context matters. This dynamic between speaker and audience matters. We have a woman writing to a man in power in the 1800s. She says, I want something, but I don't have the power to make it happen. How can I convince this person to use his power in a way that I want? Well, I know he's an egomaniac. Let me play to that. That's different than other letters. It's unique to this one. And that's, I guess, kind of our big takeaway, right? We have the powerless writing to the powerful. Like any letter, the writer wants something, but power dynamics matter. So how does she go about persuading Napoleon? That's what you're looking for as you analyze this particular letter. How does she try and convince him that this is the right move? It's ultimately up to you, of course, because you have power, but how is she trying to go ahead and kind of convince him that there are benefits to doing so? And that's really that delicate dance that I kind of made a note about at the bottom here. She is very intelligent. She's a wonderful writer, but she's very cognizant of her audience and his ego. He is not impressed. And in fact, she has to be careful not to threaten him. Welcome to the fragility, right, of men in the 1800s. I'll leave that there. As she sits down at a blank piece of paper, I asked that same question for Madeleine Albright. We asked the same question for Bill Clinton. They sat down in front of a blank piece of paper, had a specific audience in mind, and wrote. She has a very specific audience in mind as she tries to get Hugo pardoned. How does she convince this guy to use his power in a way that she wants? Very, very intelligent move she makes. Folks, have fun diving into it. Check out what makes this unique. Check out how she tries to convince him to use his power. Let's do it.